Welcome back to our next conversation on tax payment culture. We have Joachim Ebong, Senior Analyst with SBM Intelligence, joining us now. Great to have you on the program. Good morning.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
All right, so looking at your report, it says in Lagos now that some bus drivers pay as much as 3,000 naira a day in taxes to different groups. Can you please explain this?
Yeah, so if you sit in a bus, a downfall bus going from maybe, let me say, Bagada, for example, to Obalende or elsewhere, at some points they have to stop and, someone jumps in the bus and then
marks their bus
marks
with
their
some
bus and
marker.
it gives them a number and so on. If they stand at one spot and they load, the buses that stand in one space in one spot to load, before they move, they typically also pay those people, and for as many times as they load, they have complete loads of people.
It's called Owo loading.
Owo loading, there is, yes, so there's Owo loading, there's Owo council, and so on. So by the time you add all those many things up, in some parts of Lagos, you do get up to that figure. It's something that we have, the informal economy is something that we're looking closely at SBM Intelligence. And we decided, because we knew that the common notion of Nigerians not paying taxes has been false and has been false for a long time. But we decided to really get to the depth of it, understand the depth and the breadth of the tax burden borne by the informal economy. And our report says that tax burden is pretty significant.
98% you placed it.
Yes.
Oh, 98% of... No, but you have just given an example of a bus. I mean, there are groups of people who do not use public transportation. But you are now saying it's the informal sector generally. So how do you now make it 98? How do you get this 98% of the informal sector?
Yes. So that's a good question. What we did was we went across about a dozen cities, places like Ibadan, Kano, Enugu, Lagos, and so on. So various cities, and we made sure that we covered every geopolitical zone to give that a good spread as well. And we also did not just bus drivers, but vulcanizers, hairdressers, and other business owners in that, and that is how we came up with that figure. We understand that the figure is going to shock some people, it's going to surprise some people.
Yeah, because I mean, you're talking about almost everybody, 98%.
Yes, precisely. So we had to
100%.
make sure that research was as in-depth as possible in order to get the accurate picture. There are some people who do not pay some of these taxes because they are able to dodge one way or the other, but there are not many of them. Even the people who sell by the roadside, that little space they occupy on the ledges there, right? They have to pay for every space.
Yes, I do know. I mean, when you go to the market.
In the market,
yes,
outside the market, so they have to pay all of that. Nothing is free. Nothing is free.
But this is the scenario I know about Lagos. Is that the way it is in other states? So
yes, absolutely. Absolutely, that is it. At all the major markets, the pattern is the same. However, what happens and what is different is that the amount that they pay may be less, and the number of times they pay may also be less, right? Again, in keeping with perhaps various income levels, various levels of business and so on. But the pattern is the same. In some places, they pay about 2 times a day. In some places, they pay higher, they pay less. But nearly everybody pays.
So who accounts for?
Where does it go to?
Where does it go to?
And that's a fantastic question. You see, in our line of work, you get to find out the kinds of things that some of these union bosses are up to, the kind of things they do with money. And a lot of that money does not go to state coffers. What happens is that the market associations, NURTW, and the various people that run the various parks in the various cities are the people who take most of that money. Now, there is a lot of room here for state governments to actually insist, state and local governments to actually insist and put up structures by which they can have this money.
What do they provide, without collecting all this money?
And that's another good question. And we had to ask that to the people who we spoke to. It's not a lot, actually, The people who tend to provide the most with regard to services back to those who pay are in the market associations, with regard to waste disposal, perhaps some issues, trying to solve some issues with electricity and so on. But I think when you come out of the market association space and you talk to people who do either Okada, bus drivers, or organizers, and so on, what they get back for the money that they pay is not a lot at all.
And all these things, I mean, when you talk to some of them, they connect it to the local government. It's not just the market association. I mean, you see some of those guys who stand on the road and they say they're from the local government.
with their little ID cards.
Yeah, so little or green ID card with paper like that. So it's still connected to the government.
Yes. So again, you want to understand that at local level in Nigeria, there are various forces that are at play, particularly political forces. Now, what happens is that those political stakeholders at local level, at world level, right? They also take their own share of whatever proceeds they get, and then they translate, and then they give the rest to the government. It is the as we say, the price of doing business at local political level. So they take their cuts, they remit some of it to the state governments, and so on. And I think that the way by which these taxes are collected is also a really important part of why they are able to do what they do.
Yeah.
So is there a way to cleanse the system? Because obviously, eventually, when we complain or we talk about inflation, prices are going up, because it passes back to the consumer at the end of the day.
Yes, it does.
You and I pay for it. And is there a way to cleanse the system from your findings?
Yes, so I think that there are a couple of things that can be done immediately. First, everybody who pays taxes anywhere in Nigeria should have that amount against his or her name.
Okay.
That's the first thing. The second thing is that the taxes should
serious record keeping.
Yes,
yes,
serious record keeping.
That?
Precisely. There you go.
Even on the national level, we're talking of data.
Precisely, and that is the work of government at federal level, at state level, and local level. Once you begin to attach the taxes people pay to their names or to their phone numbers, what then happens is that you see there's a transparency there, and you are then able to determine how much the person has paid over so and so and so time. The second main point is that those taxes should not be arbitrary, but they should be as a percentage of income. So ideally, I don't know why anybody should pay more than 30% of their income to anybody in total. And I think that the kind of amounts that we are talking about easily go beyond that figure in some respects. So one, arbitrary. Two, it needs to be much more transparent. And then, you also have to get people to see the benefits by which of
But I mean, some of these people in the informal sector, it's difficult to determine their income.
That's another one.
I mean, it's not stable.
Yeah. Again, yes, it's not stable, but typically there are averages. So, for example, instead of maybe this particular month, you can use an average of the last 3 months or so, the last 3 or 4 months, to determine how much they should pay in taxes, and then that can then be taken and then be done in a way by which they can have more disposable income left over and they can do more with it instead of simply giving money to people who
your solution sounds really interesting, but so far-fetched when we look at the realities in Nigeria. Because, I mean, we're talking of, for instance, the vaccine issue now, and we're asking, do we have, the right data, enough data? Now we're going to the informal sector
which is...
I think that when we talk so much about revenue mobilization, expanding the tax net, and so on, you see, these things require work. You cannot use press conferences to expand taxnet. Right. You cannot use PowerPoint slides to expand taxnet. You have to go to the streets
and do the work,
and ensure that what people pay is linked to their names, linked to whatever ID they have, and then you can then see the pipeline of that money entering government coffers. Because without that, I mean, you cannot just have reforms in press conferences. That doesn't work.
On the pages of newspaper and on television. Thank you so much, Joachim, for sharing your findings with us. Very interesting one there. 98% of participants in the informal sector pay taxes. And this is well against the majority notion. Thank you so much. And we look forward to when we can actually implement some of those solutions.
Progress. Yeah, sure.
And make progress in our tax.
Thank you.
Well, we'll take a break now. When we come back, the issue of crude thefts or even knowing our daily consumption of oil? Those are issues we'll discuss next. Do join us. It's Business Morning on Channel Television.